Whether you're currently going through a divorce or if you're just doing some advanced research on who would keep the marital home, it may seem almost unthinkable to be on either side of the coin. On the one hand, it may seem very hard to picture giving up your claim on the marital home while your spouse stays put. At the same time, it may also be hard to picture keeping the marital home and then forcing your spouse to make a home elsewhere. Although, depending on your situation, maybe that's not that hard to picture. Welcome to the Divorce and Real Estate Expert, where we provide guidance on divorce and real estate related topics. The marital home is likely to be the largest asset in your marital estate. Combine that with the fact that there are likely significant emotions attached to the property, as well as the memories that were made there, and you have the recipe for, at a minimum, strained communication. There's also the potential for significantly worse outcomes. So, first things first, is the house even up for negotiation? If one spouse bought the home prior to the date of the marriage, in their name alone, then the home may be considered a premarital asset. That means that the home would belong solely to that person and it would be off the negotiating table completely. Now, I use the word may because even if it was bought prior to the date of the marriage, in one person's name alone, it may still have been commingled with other marital assets and may therefore be considered a marital asset and then be divided between the parties. A simple way to think about commingled funds is to picture a joint bank account where both parties have their paychecks deposited. The funds in that account may now be considered commingled, subject to allocation between the parties during a divorce. To carry that example forward, if one spouse had purchased a house prior to the date of marriage in their name alone, but then the property gets refinanced into both of their names, or if both parties make payments on the property, then the property may be considered a marital asset. What was once premarital and off the negotiating table is now a marital asset subject to division between the parties. Now, this is a nuanced topic. There's a couple different ways you can commingle funds. It may vary by jurisdiction, but something to think about, consider, and research if there's a property that's only in one spouse's name. So, let's assume the house is on the negotiating table. Who gets it? Let's start with the simplest possible scenario. As part of the division of assets, you and your spouse will go through the process of identifying all of your marital assets and your marital debts. Once you've identified all of your assets and obligations, you'll have to come up with one or more scenario of which spouse gets which assets and which obligations. As you go through this exercise, you may come to the conclusion that once the marital estate is divided between you, only one of you can afford to live in the house anyway. While this may not be easy for the spouse who moves out, it can be a simple solution that may expedite the divorce process. Conversely, you may find out that neither of you can afford to maintain the household on one income alone, leading to the sale of the marital home to fund your future separate households. But what about when you both want the house and the marital assets are such that either of you can afford to retain the property? Now, I would ask you to consider the children. If there are children involved, there may be circumstances where the children's comfort dictates who keeps the house. Perhaps one parent will be the primary physical custodian, or the kids have close friends who live nearby, and you want the children to maintain those relationships. There are also unconventional strategies, such as bird nesting, where the children remain in the marital home and the parents take turns living in the house as dictated in the parenting plan. While there's a time and place for everything, on balance, I would not recommend this strategy for everyone. There's also the inverse approach, where one parent trades away primary custody in exchange for the marital home. Yuck. Okay, the house is on the table. Both spouses can afford to keep it, and the children don't pose a compelling case for one spouse to keep the house. What now? Consider if one spouse contributed a lot more to the purchase and maintenance of the property, and whether a case can be made for that spouse to keep the house. However, if the other spouse invested heavily in caring for the children in the property and was the driving force behind making the house a home, then those arguments may offset each other in a way. Take a close look at not only whether both spouses can afford the house now, but what the future financial picture looks like for both spouses. If one spouse wants the house and can technically afford to maintain it now, but at the expense of any hope of retirement, there may be a thought to figure that out later. That is a red flag that should be examined thoroughly, thoughtfully, and in context to your full financial picture. A trusted financial advisor may be able to provide an objective opinion for you to weigh along with the other considerations to arrive at a decision that protects you from pain or regret later. Here's what I would urge you to remember, and it's very important. If you and your spouse don't decide who keeps the house, the judge will. Look at it from the judge's perspective. They have a never-ending backlog of cases where more often than not, both parties spend untold hours arming their attorneys with the ammunition to prove the other spouse is a terrible human, which the attorneys deliver to the best of their abilities. Most times, the judge has mere minutes to review what amounts to your entire financial and parental life, then rule on how to divide it. Family law court judges have incredible latitude in their rulings, and despite your opinion of your evidence, you might not get the outcome you want or expect. I've seen judges give extremely unexpected rulings. If you don't think the judge ruled appropriately and you have the desire and money to appeal, depending on jurisdiction, you might find yourself right back in the same court questioning the judge's ruling. But remember, family law courts have extreme latitude in how they rule, so you might find yourself ice skating uphill. Your best bet is by far, is to come to an informed, equitable agreement with your spouse. Thank you so much for watching. If you're in a position where you need to sell the family home, click the first link in the description for a video detailing how to handle the process of selling the family home during a divorce. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel for more tips on navigating divorce and real estate. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below and we'll be sure to respond as soon as possible. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.